Picture this scenario. It is pitch black. The ocean is silent. Somewhere in the depths of the northern Arabian Sea, a ghost moves without sound. No radar can see it, no sonar can track it, and it is carrying enough firepower to erase entire military complexes off the face of the earth. That ghost is HMS Anson, Britain's deadliest nuclear-powered hunter, and right now it is waiting, armed, silent, and pointed directly at Iran. Meanwhile, above the surface, the world is watching a countdown. A 48-hour ultimatum from Washington, a coalition of 22 nations that has never been assembled this fast. And an Iranian regime that thought it had strangled the global economy, only to find the news tightening around its own throat. What began on February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel struck Iran and killed its supreme leader, has now become the most dangerous maritime crisis since the Second World War. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow, irreplaceable choke point through which 20% of the world's oil passes every single day, has been effectively closed. And in closing it, Trone has triggered a response that is now shaking the foundations of the global security architecture. Today, we are going to break down every layer of this crisis, from the submarine lurking in the Arabian Sea to the secret six-point surrender document Washington sent to Tehran, from the coalition the United States can barely hold together to the economic catastrophe that is already unfolding in real time. And we are going to walk you through exactly what happens next, because the world is about to change. If you haven't subscribed to World Brief Daily yet, now is the perfect time. This is exactly the kind of story we exist to cover, deep, accurate, and told without the noise. Hit subscribe, enable notifications, and let's get into it. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the beginning. On February 28, 2026, American and Israeli forces launched a massive coordinated strike on Iranian military targets. Among the dead was Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for more than 3 decades. That single act changed everything. Iran did not retreat. It escalated. Within hours, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps transmitted warnings over VHF radio to every vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. The message was simple and terrifying. No ship is allowed to pass. Not yours, not anyone's. By March 2nd, as reported by the Congressional Research Service, a senior IRGC official officially confirmed what everyone already knew. The strait was closed, and Iran was prepared to enforce that closure with missiles, drones, sea mines, and submarines. The immediate effect on global markets was staggering. According to Al Jazeera's Center for Studies, tanker traffic through the strait dropped by 90% in the first week of March 2026. 90%. The International Energy Agency launched the largest emergency reserve release in its history. And Brent crude prices, which had been trading at moderate levels just weeks before, surged past $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years, reaching a peak of $126 per barrel. According to Britannica's coverage of the 2026 Iran war, energy analysts warned that without a medium-term resolution, prices could push toward $200 per barrel. That would be catastrophic, not just for energy markets, but for food, fertilizer, aluminum, helium, virtually every commodity that moves through supply chains. The Congress.gov research report stated it plainly. This is the largest disruption to the global energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis. That is not hyperbole. That is what the numbers say. And yet, opening the strait militarily is far harder than it sounds. Here is where it gets interesting and sobering. Iran has nearly 1,000 miles of coastline along the Persian Gulf. Its mobile anti-ship missile batteries can be repositioned constantly. The northern shore of the strait is not flat, open ground. It is hills, mountains, valleys, offshore islands, and build-up areas. As former Royal Navy Strategic Studies Center head Roel Rowland told CNN, detection of incoming threats is extremely difficult in that terrain. Iran can hide its weapon systems, and when they strike from everywhere at once. As the Congress.gov analysis outlined, Iran operates two parallel navies, the conventional Islamic Republic of Iran Navy and the ideologically driven IRGC Navy, which holds sole responsibility for the Persian Gulf. These forces have been attacking commercial ships since the blockade began. According to the UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre, at least 21 confirmed attacks on merchant vessels had occurred by mid-March 2026. Ships have been struck by drone boats, ballistic missiles, and projectiles. Sailors have been killed. Crews have abandoned vessels. The oil tanker Skylight was struck north of Kasab, Oman, killing 2 Indian crew members. The MKDVOM was hit by a drone boat, sparking a fire in its engine room. An Indian sailor was killed on the LCTI. This is not a hypothetical threat. This is active warfare against civilian shipping. Now here's the response, and this is where the story becomes extraordinary. On March 19, 2026, the United States formally launched what it called Operation Epic Fury, a sustained aerial campaign to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by destroying Iran's naval capacity to enforce the blockade. General Dan Kane announced the deployment of A-10 Thunderbolt II jets to strike fast-attack watercraft and Boeing AH-64 Apache gunships to neutralize one-way attack drones. CENTCOM published footage showing strikes destroying Iranian naval assets, threatening international shipping. Secretary of Defense Hageth later reported that since the beginning of joint U.S. and Israeli strikes, over 15,000 Iranian targets had been struck. Iran's missile volume, he said, was down 90%. One-way attack drones down 95%. And in a statement to the press, Hageth went further. He declared that Iran's entire ballistic missile production capacity, every company building, every component of those missiles, had been functionally defeated and destroyed. But here's the problem. Even 90% suppression is not zero. And in the confined waters of the Strait of Hormuz, residual capability is still deadly. As CNN reported, citing military analysts, the risk to commercial shipping cannot be reduced to zero. Iran still has its geography, it still has its mines, it still has its submarines. And that is where HMS Anson enters the picture. Beyond land attack, HMS Anson carries Spearfish heavyweight torpedoes. Each one weighs nearly 2 tons. They use advanced sonar guidance and are designed to engage both underwater and surface threats at long range. According to reporting by Interesting Engineering, Iran has stationed at least 17 submarines in Bandar Abbas, including Kilo-class and Fate-class vessels. The Fate-class in particular, equipped with multiple torpedo tubes, poses significant risk to surface vessels in the confined Gulf waters. HMS Anson is designed to hunt and neutralize exactly these kinds of threats before they can reach commercial shipping lanes. There is another dimension to this deployment that goes beyond firepower. HMS Annan is also an intelligence platform. Submerged and undetected, It can monitor Iranian naval movements in real time, detect mine-laying operations, collect electronic intelligence on Iranian radar and communication systems, and share that picture with allied forces in a conflict zone where information is everything. That persistent covert surveillance capability is worth as much as the tomahawks themselves. Now, the deployment of HMS Annan did not happen in a vacuum. It came alongside a series of decisions by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer that mark a fundamental shift in London's strategic posture. The immediate trigger, as multiple sources confirm, was Iran's ballistic missile attack on Diego Garcia, the critical joint UK-US base in the Indian Ocean. One missile broke apart in midair. The second was intercepted at the last moment by U.S. defense systems, but the strategic message was unmistakable. With a confirmed range of 4,000 kilometers, Iranian ballistic missiles now put capitals across Europe, London, Paris, Berlin, within theoretical range. That changed Starmer's calculus. The British government responded in two steps. First, it granted the United States full authority to use British military bases for operations against Iranian targets. That authorization, initially limited to defensive measures, was subsequently expanded to cover operations protecting maritime shipping directly, including offensive strikes. Second, in a decision reported by the Daily Mail and confirmed by defense sources, Starmer gave the order that sent HMS Anson north from Perth into the Arabian Sea. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was direct in his condemnation. He warned Britain that its decision to allow U.S. forces to use British bases amounted to what he called, and I quote directly from his statement, participation in aggression. The UK press confirmed that on the same day HMS Anson's deployment was reported. Downing Street expanded U.S. access to RAF Fairford and the joint-use UK facility at Diego Garcia. Beyond the submarine, Britain has assembled a broader naval and air presence in the region. The Type 45 destroyer HMS Dragon, equipped with one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world, departed the UK to protect airspace around the Akroy base in Cyprus. Royal Air Force Typhoon fighter jets, stationed at bases in Qatar and Cyprus, have been placed on active readiness to counter Iranian drone swarms. Wildcat helicopters at Akroy, armed with Martlet missiles, are standing by to hunt fast attack boats. The permanent UK Naval Support Facility in Bahrain, housing 500 military personnel, is coordinating the overall operation, and the logistics support ship Aeroline Bay is on high readiness, prepared for civilian evacuation scenarios if required. It is a significant military commitment, but it is also a fragile one. As Army recognition noted, the Royal Navy has limited surface vessels in the region. The last My Hunter HMS Middleton was retired earlier in 2026, and HMS Anson is the only fully operational Astute-class submarine Britain has available. Every piece of this chess that matters enormously. Now here is where the diplomatic dimension becomes just as fascinating as the military one. The United States has been struggling to build a coalition to share the burden of securing the strait. And the struggle has been very public and at times very ugly. On March 15, 2026, President Trump called on, and this is a direct quote reported across multiple outlets, countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait to take care of that passage militarily. The response from most of his NATO allies, according to Axios reporting, ranged from skepticism to outright refusal. Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius said the situation was not our war. European Foreign Policy Chief Koakalos told reporters after an EU foreign ministers meeting that there is no appetite among the 27 EU member states to join Trump's coalition. "This is not Europe's war," she said. Trump's reaction was characteristically forceful. He called his NATO allies cowards. He described the alliance as a paper tiger without the United States. He said he would remember the countries that refused, and he announced the United States would work instead with Israel and Gulf nations. But here's where it gets interesting. Beneath the public fracturing, a quieter diplomatic process was running in parallel. Britain had been circulating a plan, and slowly nations began to sign on. By the time a formal joint declaration emerged, 22 countries had added their signatures. The founding group, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan, was joined by Canada, South Korea, New Zealand, Sweden, and Finland. Critically, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates also joined, providing regional legitimacy to the effort. The coalition issued a statement officially declaring Iran's blockade a clear violation of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. They cited UN Security Council Resolution 2817. They condemned Iran's attacks on civilian infrastructure, energy facilities, and commercial vessels in the strongest available diplomatic language. And they announced support for countries conducting contingency planning to ensure safe passage through the straits. Diplomatic language for endorsing whatever military action the US and UK choose to take. The economic scaffolding was being erected alongside the military one. In coordination with the International Energy Agency, strategic oil reserves were released to ease market pressure. The U.S. Treasury Department granted a 30-day exemption period for Iranian oil sales to temporarily calm the global energy crisis while the military dimension played out. But behind all of this, a far more consequential document was circulating. According to a highly classified report leaked to Axios, Washington conveyed its final conditions to Tehran through intelligence channels using Egypt, Qatar, and the United Kingdom as intermediaries. These are not negotiating positions. They read more like terms of surrender. 6 demands. First, Iran must immediately suspend its ballistic missile program for a period of 5 years. Second, all uranium enrichment must cease completely, with enrichment levels reduced to 0. Third, critical nuclear reactors at Natanz, Isfahan, and Fidal must be sealed. Fourth, the number of ballistic missiles in Iran's possession must be capped at a maximum of 1,000. Fifth, all financial and military support to regional proxy forces, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, must be cut off entirely. Sixth, and implicitly, Iran must reopen the Strait of Hormuz immediately and unconditionally. As Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlined publicly, the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are the destruction of Iran's air force, the destruction of its navy, the severe degradation of its missile capability, and the destruction of its weapons manufacturing infrastructure. So as Rubio put it directly, Iran can never hide behind it to acquire a nuclear weapon. Rubio also stated with unmistakable clarity that Iran would not be allowed to establish a permanent regime of control over international waterways. That will never be allowed to happen. He said Iranian state media, citing an unnamed senior official, confirmed that Throne rejected the U.S. proposal. Iran laid out its own conditions. A complete halt to what it called aggression and assassinations. Concrete guarantees against the reimposition of war reparations, and most provocatively, explicit exercise of sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. That last demand is a non-starter for Washington. It always will be. So where does that leave us? On March 21st, President Trump issued a direct ultimatum, as reported by the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Trump warned that Iran's power plants would be obliterated unless the strait was fully reopened. The primary target identified was the Damavand Combined Cycle Power Plant, a facility with a capacity of 2,868 megawatts, supplying electricity to Tehran. A close blockade of Iranian non-oil imports, using the fact that 80% of Iran's imports pass through Hormuz to create maximum economic pressure. Or direct strikes on Kharg Island's energy infrastructure, a step that has been threatened but not yet taken as of the time of writing. Meanwhile, Iran's own terms for ending the war, including sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, are a provocation that Washington will never accept. Secretary Rubio made that explicit, and Trump's ultimatums grow increasingly severe with each passing day. The 22-nation coalition provides international legitimacy, but as Al Jazeera's Center for Studies warned, even initiating a full military campaign to physically reopen the strait could trigger a global economic crisis. The Persian Gulf states, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, rely heavily on maritime imports for daily necessities. A full complex scenario would trap them in the crossfire. The stance of China and Russia adds another layer of strategic complexity. Beijing and Moscow have been notably absent from any coalition against Iran. China, in fact, has been receiving Iranian oil throughout the conflict, a fact the Washington Institute suggested the U.S. should address by intercepting Iranian shadow tankers. If Washington moves to cut off Chinese oil receipts from Iran, that introduces a direct U.S.-China dimension to a crisis that was already complicated enough. And then there is the possibility that Beijing uses this moment to recalibrate its own calculations regarding Taiwan. If Washington is stretched thin militarily, politically, and economically by the Hormuz crisis, that window does not go unnoticed in Beijing. Let us be direct about where things stand on this April 1st, 2026. The 48-hour ultimatum from Washington is drawing to its close. Iran has rejected U.S. terms. Its military has been severely degraded but not destroyed. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed, with shipping traffic still dramatically below normal levels. Brent crude has surged to its highest price in years. The IEA has released emergency reserves, but that is a temporary measure. The 22-nation coalition exists, but its cohesion is under pressure. NATO allies are divided. Japan is waiting on a ceasefire that has not arrived. And beneath the surface of the northern Arabian Sea, HMS Anson is waiting for a single encrypted transmission from Northwood that no one in Thrawn can intercept. This crisis began in the spring of 2026 as a regional conflict. It has since become something far larger. It is a test of how the rules-based international order responds when one nation decides to close a critical global waterway by force. It is a test of how alliance structures function when the United States demands its partners take on risks they would prefer to avoid. It is a test of whether economic pressure can be weaponized faster than military pressure can be answered. And it is a test of whether a nuclear-powered submarine lurking in the deep can deter a regime that has already decided it has nothing left to lose. The world's leaders, markets, and populations are watching. They are all waiting for the same thing, a decision. Either the Strait of Hormuz opens and the global energy supply chain stabilizes, or it doesn't, and we enter an era of global uncertainty unlike anything the modern international system has experienced. The answers to those questions are being written right now, not in press conferences, not in diplomatic cables. They are being written in encrypted transmissions to a submarine nobody can find, and in decisions being made in Tehran by people who are now cornered. We will, of course, keep you updated as this story develops. This is exactly the kind of analysis World Brief Daily was built for. If today's breakdown gave you something the mainstream coverage did not, then share this video, tell someone about this channel, and make sure you are subscribed so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.